Welcome back to our fireplace build series. This is video 2 in a 7-part series. Now come back every Saturday for another video until we get them all finished up. Today we're going to cover framing and adding a substrate to that frame. I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. Welcome back. This video in the fireplace series covers framing and choosing between drywall and cement board to cover your frame. As always, I started with the drawing. I find that putting things down on paper helped me work through design ideas and sort of head off any potential problems that I might run into in the build. Okay, as you'll see, there's a little difference between my drawing and the actual fireplace. I made the firebox just a little bit smaller. There are a couple of things that you can do to make an electric log set seem more realistic. And one of the things is reducing the size of the firebox to the bare minimum. I knew I wanted the fireplace to be floor to ceiling, so the only decisions I had to make were the width and the depth. Now, this is not a huge living room, so I knew I didn't want to make it any deeper, any more out into the room than I had to. So I used the dimensions of the fireplace log set to determine the minimum depth that I could get by with. And then I just sort of measured and tried to decide how much space I wanted to give up as far as the width and to get a good proportion of width to height. And I settled on this width, which is about 6 feet wide. I sketched out the footprint dimensions that I wanted, and then I built the base for this out of 2x4s. I used 2.5-inch construction screws to put that together, and then I used 3-inch construction screws to attach it to the studs in the wall and a couple of places in the floor. Now, a sloping ceiling like mine can really be confusing when you're trying to convert horizontal dimensions on the floor to a slope ceiling up high. So here's what I did. I used a laser level. I lined it up with the base and marked the matching points on the ceiling. I moved the laser level from corner to corner until all dimensions were laid out. I measured and cut the 2x4s and attached those to the ceiling. I double-checked level lines and I measured from the wall to the front to make sure that the depth stayed consistent all the way across on the ceiling and that it matched the depth of the bottom. I measured from the base to the ceiling frame to determine the length that I needed to cut the vertical 2x4s. I attached those using pocket hole screws. Now, if you've not used pocket hole screws, you can go to my video on building the window seat where we talk a little bit more in depth about that. I attached 2 vertical 2x4s against the wall from floor to the ceiling frame, and then I did 2 at each outside corner from the base to the ceiling frame, and then I did 2 vertical that were spaced equidistant across the front. Be sure that you check the level on each of your vertical 2x4s. As long as you get those straight, you're off to a good start, and you can be sure that you're going to have a nice level frame and that nothing's going to be leaning one way or the other. Then I measured, cut, and installed the horizontal 2x4 pieces. Those stabilize the vertical boards, and it gives you something to attach your substrate to when we add that. Day 2 of the fireplace build. I'm getting a late start today. I had some errands I had to run early this morning. So here I am. And sometimes when I can't get up and get right at it, I have a little trouble getting motivated to get going once I get home. So I'm having a kombucha that is probably the most sour kombucha I've ever tasted in my life. Let me show you where we are. All right, I showed you in the first little sneak peek video that where I drew out the fireplace. So now I'm basically just framing it in. You can see right over here to get it centered on the fan and the sofa. I couldn't get both corners on studs, so I opened that up and I horizontally screwed in some 2x4s between the studs. Now, normally I would just open up a section in the wall and just put in a ceiling to floor stud there and attach to that. I couldn't do that because across the bottom was a huge mass of wires that were running through the 2x4s. So rather than deal with that, I did it this way. The horizontal 2x4s at the back wall, those are attached to studs in 5 places. And so those studs, in addition to my little patchwork there, are I've used structural screws going in to the ends of those 2x4s. So I feel like everything is good. It's probably overkill. This doesn't shake at all. Now I would rather do overkill than be too stingy with the 2x4s and the construction screws, because I'm kind of making this up as I go along. I just try to make sure that I have secure points of contact to the wall and secure contact with the framing on the front. So even though we're going to cheat and use foam for most of the dimension on this, I still want to make sure that it's just really sturdy and nothing is going to pull away. All right. So what I have left are to put these 2 horizontal short pieces here, one here. I've got to put one here. Now this is where the TV mount goes. We want it, probably it will seem, when you look at it, it will seem like it's kind of low, but honestly it's a comfortable height, and we're doing this to use, not to display. So it may look in the pictures like this is going too low, but this is where we've had it since we moved here, and it's a comfortable height. Now I'm not sure. I am going to recess the TV mount just a little so that the TV doesn't stick out quite as much when it's pushed in. It does have an arm that lets it move and tilt in all directions. But when it's pushed up against the wall, I want it to recede as much as possible. And I'll make a frame for it too, and that'll be another video. And after I do that, I've got to build the firebox, which will be arched, and I'll do some progress videos on that. And then I just skin the whole thing out in drywall, and then we move on to the fun part. So I'll do some progress videos and put those all together for you. A little note here that I forgot to mention in the last video clip. Do you see the short pieces of 2x4 that run from the front vertical 2x4s to the back? I did install those at every intersection just to make sure that the front wall of the fireplace frame is fully attached to the back wall. Here is a little trick when you could use an extra pair of hands. Clamp some little pieces of scrap wood on either side where you need that horizontal 2x4 to rest, and then you can just place it there and you have your hands free to use the drill to attach it. Now I'm cutting the top of the arch in the firebox using a jigsaw, and I went ahead and just attached it with just a few screws to hold it in place because I wanted to get a feel for how tall I really wanted that arch to be. I had started to think that my original plan for the firebox was too large, and it turned out I was right. So don't ever be afraid to make changes to a design in the middle of a project. Just be brave and make whatever changes you need to. fireplace framing is all finished. It's ready for the drywall or the cement board, whichever you choose. You can see I used some of that now infamous lumber that I salvaged from my bad marketplace dining table purchase. I used it, that's that brown decorative wood there you see. As far as boxing in the firebox, I just attached some plywood that ran from the front to the back 2x4s on each side. I did add another 2x4 under the bottom just to support it, even though the fire logs don't weigh that much, and put plywood across that. And I added a little 2x4 running front to back on each side of the top and attached the plywood to make a little ceiling inside the firebox that you don't see, but it keeps the heat from the fire logs from just rising and not coming out into the room. It was a very late night, but I got the drywall up. And as you can see, I installed the pieces horizontally. I found that was the most efficient way to apply them, and actually the easiest. I had less waste that way. I used 1 5/8 inch coarse thread drywall screws, and as you can see from the close-up, I installed those about every 4 to 5 inches. Well, it would appear that the late night video gremlins did something with all the video I shot of actually installing this drywall. So we're going to try this. Pretend with me, if you will, that that red heavy horizontal line there is a 2x4 or a furring strip. That's the easiest way to install a piece of drywall when you're working by yourself. When you do that, you can just rest that sheet of plywood on it, get a couple of screws into it in the center, and then both hands are free, and you can go ahead and drill the rest of your drywall screws. Now, in this one, we had to cut out that recessed area for the TV mount was. I find that it's easier just to go ahead and install the whole sheet of drywall that you've cut to fit the width, and then just go back and cut out any areas like that that you need to remove material. Thanks so much for joining us on this video series. Next week, we'll cover preparing the surface to receive the vertical concrete. These videos come out every Saturday, so I hope we see you then. Until then, stay curious, stay creative, and always, always be kind. Bye-bye.